Hello everybody, in second part of the tutorial about basics of HTML and CSS. Last time we create basic template of web page which should look something like this. But if you remember, our aim is to create template which will look like that one. For this we need to use some styling of our document. We do this by adding cascading style sheet to the HTML. We can do this, so if we open our web page in the Notepad++, we can add styling by typing in the header section of our document following style type equal text/CSS. Of course we need to close it. Just a reminder, please be careful when you type all comments and type them exactly as me in order to get everything working perfectly. So now if we want to change any element of our web page, we do this by typing this element tag. For example, if we want to change the span, my name between those tags, we type span, if I can type, and we open curly brackets, and between those brackets we use pairs of properties and values for that property. So for example, if you want to change the color, we type color colon, and we can type name of that color. That's one of the methods. So for example, if we change it for red, we save it and launch. As you can see, we change both tags, both spans for red. Typing name of the color is one of the methods to apply color to any element in our HTML document. Another methods are, using RGB or RGBA tags, which use set of 3 or 4 numbers, and another method is using hexadecimal code corresponding to the proper color. This time we use the name of the color. It's not the best method. We can have just basics color by this, but in this tutorial we will use all of the methods in different places, just to show you that all of them work. If we, as you saw a few seconds earlier, we changed 2 spans, this one and this one. If we want to change just one of them, we can do this by adding ID to the first one. For example, ID name, and now if we type hash for ID and that name, Save it and run. As you can see, we changed just the first span. The second one is still the same. Okay. Let's remove that section and let's learn the proper way of adding CSS. That's the one of the ways. However, if you will have more pages and you want to have the same styling apply, then we will have multiple you have to copy all that stuff in all the pages. If you change something in one, then you will have to change in every page that thing. So the proper way is to someone smart said that we can have all stylings in a separate file and just link it to the web page, saving space. And of course, if you want to change anything in all web pages, you change one file. So firstly, let's create that file. And let's save it as style.css. Save it. Okay. And now, if we want to link something, we go to our document and let's comment that here we link CSS file, and to link it we use, knowing already word link, ref, because this file is in the same folder like the index file, so we use dot or full stop slash, the name was style, and remember to add extension. Close it, and we need to specify relation. So this is the style sheet. This way we link our styles to that web page. As I explained last time, this way we inform document that we want to link a file which is in the same folder as our web page, and the relation is a type of style sheet. So now we can modify all our web pages by editing just one single CSS file. As I was saying before, to change properties of every, for example, span tag, we simply type span and our property name we want to change with value to which we want to assign it. If you want to change only one element of the web page, we can add ID attribute to it on the web page and then type name of that element we choose for this. If we have more than one element we want to change, but not all of them, we group them by using attribute called class. For example, we have 3 divs, but we want to change background for only 2 of them. So we can simply do this by adding class attribute to those we want to change, like class equals quote, let's say change background, and just select that copy, and let's say we leave the second unchanged and we add that to the third one. Of course we need to save it. And now if we type here div, and for class we use dot, change background, and to change background we will use the background color command, property, colon, and let's use RGB and set it, for example, 125, 100, 0, semicolon. Save it, go to our index file and run. Bingo! As you can see, we changed background for our two divs, leaving this middle one unchanged. Okay, but we won't use this, so delete this. Delete this and this. Save it. Now let's check one more thing. Save it this. Let's check layout of web page. So if we open our web page and click inspect element, and then if you go to the layout, you can see that how that block looks actually. So in the center of this block we have our content. So this is, for example, that text, header, image. Around that we have padding between that content and border, which in our case is invisible. And then around that border we have margin, which is also kind of a space between this element and next one. We also have offset, but don't worry about that, it's rarely used. For our styling we want to set all margins and paddings on our page to be 0. Okay, because we will change that later in every separate element. So for this we type, to change all elements in body section, we type body, open curly brackets, and simply type margin, column 0, and padding 0. This time we don't have to specify units, as 0 is always 0, so the units are not necessary in this case. Now we want to have some space on top of our document, and we want to be the body always white. So to add that space we type padding top, those Extra spaces are not necessary, they are just for clarity of text, so you don't have to do that, it just looks nicer. We want to have like 90 pixels. And we use again background color. And we use word white. So we set our background of our body of our document or web page to be white. We set all margins and paddings to be 0. And then we say that, wait, we want to have padding on the top to be 90. Okay, let's add font style attribute to our web page. That will make our page look nicer. To do this, let's open as you can see, we applied the padding on the top, so we have extra space here. But let's open Google web page and type in Google Fonts. Choose the first link and here we have many different fonts, so choose whatever one you like it. Well, let's say we choose this one. I like that one. So when you choose one of those, here is a small square with the arrow. It should, when you hover it, it should pop in the description quick use, so click on this. Go to third point, copy that line. Be careful to copy all signs. Go to our web page and in header section, I already have that, but I delete this and I will paste that one. Save it. And go to the fourth point. Don't copy that yet, but this is the line we will use in our CSS document. So leave that open, save this, and now let's say that we want to use that styling on the H1 elements. For this, we go to our CSS file and type H1, open curly brackets, and now we can copy this line, so copy it and paste here. Save it and run. Oh, we have to go to index and then we can run. Okay, as you can see, our H1 changed, but also it gets smaller, so let's make it bigger again. For this we can use font size. And let's say 6VW. Okay, just a word of explanation why we didn't download that fonts. If we will do this, so if we will download it to our machine, there is a risk that this style will work only on our machine. If someone will display our page online and he won't have those fonts on his machine installed, he will see the default fonts instead. So for this we link the fonts, and then no matter who and on what machine will open our page, the compiler will find line and try to use the fonts from that link. So he will import them to display that page. So that's the way it should be done. We set our font size and we give it value in VW. Those units allow you to specify size in terms of percentage of the viewport width. Like 6 units, like we use here, means that fonts should be 6% of the viewport width size. There is many other units, as for example EMs, VWs, points, pixels, which we use already. We also can use simple percentage. If you want to learn more about, just Google it. Now we will add line height. If I can this, and let's say we use the other font, so EM. That property specifies the minimum height of line boxes within the element, and like I said, we set it to 1 AM. We also center the text in the header and change its color. So to center, we type text align, and simple word center. And for color, we already used that command, so type color and we'll change that using the RGB. So if you remember, pause that video for a second and change that color for whatever color you want, just using values between 0 and 255. So you probably change color for something different. I use RGB 145 in all of them. So we can check how it looks now. I have kind of grayish color. Okay. Let's assume that we want to change only one word in our h1 tag, only the first one, which is in the between the span tags. We already said that we can use IDs for this, but this time I will show you another method how we can do that. So as I said, in this case span goes to play. So let's say we want to change that. We have to specify kind of a path to that span. So we type h1 greater or and span. Open curly brackets, type color, column, and this time we'll use the hexadecimal value. So let's say 35AF09. Save it and run. And here we go. We change only the first word in our header. Now let's play around a little bit with the header and its element. We want to create a kind of a bar on top of our browser that won't go away when we scroll the page, so it will be like fixed on the top of our page. To achieve that, in our style sheet document we will set the header properties. So type header, not one, header, open curly brackets, and we specify position of that header. So position, and we want to that position be fixed in one place, so fixed. Now we say where that position should be, so top, and let's say we want that have straight away on the top of our screen, so this is 0 position. And left, so from the left also we start at the beginning, so 0. And we want to have that header going through whole page, so we set width parameter to be 100%. This way we set width to be the same as our browser window, so it doesn't matter if we will change the size of the window, it will still go through whole web page. Now let's create border on the bottom of that header section, and for this we type border, but we want just the bottom of it, so border bottom. We need to set the thickness of it, so 1 pixel is enough space, and let's say that this one will be solid one. We can use other types, other styles. This one we will use solid, and let's specify RGB colors, for example 200, 0. And we can also change now the background color just for that element. So as you already know, we use for that background color command. And this time let's use RGBA, which is another method, as we want to the last number. This time we'll use 4 numbers, and the last one is alpha channel, which allow us to set transparency. Using the RGB and RGBA, we set 3 first values in range from 0 to 255, and the last one, the alpha value, is a float number between 0 and 1. So let's say that we use 255, 255, 255, and let's set the alpha for be 0.85. Okay. Next thing, we want to set a margin from the bottom. So margin bottom, and we'll set that, let's say, to be 20 pixels. And let's add padding for our content, all content. Let's say also 20 pixels. Okay, what else? We can add now. Oh, let's apply fonts to our header. Actually, don't change too much. Let's apply fonts, font family, and let's just copy this, paste here. Let's change the size of that fonts to be, for example, 42 pixels. And let's set color over the text to be black. Okay. Again, we add line height, B1 EM, and we can add also a shadow to other elements in our header, but for this one we will set the box shadow to none. As we don't want to have the shadows around that box, and we want to have, we'll set it just for the elements inside that. Okay, now we can modify some But first, let's check how it looks on our web page now. Here it is. We have the header section here with the margin padding. We have the fonts applied to this element. So let's modify some elements inside that header. For example, let's modify the icon. Go to Style Sheet. To do this, we follow the same procedure like with the span in the header 1 element. So we type header, greater or, and our element for icon was I. So let's use I. Now we can set background just for that background color, just for that element, so just for that icon, and let's say we will use RGB. Let's say we will use blue one, so 0, 0, 255. And now we will make a border for our icon, but not simple one. We will make it circle. So we type border radius. Every time if the command is correct, we should have it in the different kind of color. If something will go wrong, not always, but most of the time, if you use command which is not recognizable, or you have something wrong in the typing, the color will be black. And our border radius will be 50%. Let's apply some padding. And for example, we will add 5 pixels. Pixels, again 5 pixels, and again 10 pixels. This way we specify that we want to have our padding, and we specify 4 of the position of that padding. It always use the way to first number is top, the second one is right, bottom, and left. This way we use kind of a shortcut. Instead of typing padding bottom, padding top, we set that in one line. And always remember, it starts from top and go clockwise to right, bottom, left. To remember that easier, remember word trouble. TR, top right, O, B, bottom, L, left. Trouble. Okay, let's make that icon a little bit bigger. For this we use font size, but only for that icon, and let's say we set that to 32 pixels. And to actually see our border, that is circle, we need to add border like before. So we say thickness of that border. This one we will use dashed, and the color, let's make it different, so let's make it green. 0, 255, 0. Save it, go to index and run. And here it is. As you can see, we create kind of an ellipse around our icon. The dashes are very thin. You can fix that by make it bigger, 3 pixels. Save it and run. Oh, here it is. Okay. And now we do some funny trick. We'll change our background color of this header, and we'll add shadows to that header, but only when our mouse hovers that element. So to do this, in our CSS file, we type as follows. Again, header, because we're working on header, colon, and hover. This way we give command to the compiler that when I hover that element, do these things. Inside the curly brackets, we will use background color to change it. And let's say we will use RGB. It's 235, 235. Let's say 0. Oh, maybe RBGA would be better. And the last element, let's be 0875. And this time we will also add shadows. So box shadow, zero, 10 pixels, RGB, 135, 135, 135, just to have the same grayish color. Word of explanation. The box shadow takes more values into, so the first two are offset off on x-axis and y-axis. Third value is a blue radius, and lastly, this is the color of the shadow. For more information about box shadows and also other CSS related topics, you can check the link I will put below that video in the description. So let's check how it looks now. As you can see, when you hover, color change for yellowish, and here on the bottom there is a small shadow. However, I don't like the way that the color change immediately when we hover it. I want to have kind of like transition. So before we end, let's add that to our document. But we want to add that to all elements of our document, so we make a space on the top, and to apply that to all elements, we simply type star, which means every element on our web page will use this, and of course brackets. So now we type transition, and we specify that we won't use it on background color in 200 milliseconds. It should take 200 milliseconds and will be linear. We use column, and now we also want our box shadow to use the same. Well, we need to specify that it will use the same time as the background color, and it will be also linear. Color will use also those values. Column, and the last one, transform, because we will add transform later, as you saw on at the beginning, when the elements, when we hover it, some of the divs go bigger, some of the divs go smaller. That was also set by, that was the transform. Ms linear, okay, and semicolon. So now let's check how it looks now. As you can see, transition makes it appear a little bit slower. Change the colors slower. It looks much better, in my opinion. Right. Last two things for today. We will apply to our biggest div in our web page. We'll add width to that div, margin, and we'll see what else. So to do this, we type div. As I said already, we use hashtag for IDs, and we know that the first div have ID info boxes. Just double check. Yeah, info boxes. So we want that div to be just width 60% of our page. And now I show you another method how to center position of that div without using position center command. So we can simply specify margin for our div, and the same like we've done here with padding, we can set 4 values here. But even better, if we know that top will be the same like bottom and right will be the same like left, we can just use 2 values. So for example, we want to have 0 margin from the top and auto from the left and right. This is a shortcut to setting margin for more than one side at once. We can set 4 sides of margin to different values. However, remember that we always start from top margin or padding, and going clockwise we set right, then bottom, and lastly left margin or padding value. I already told you about trouble, which will help you to remember order of this. Setting right margin to auto value will tell the browser that it should adjust the margin, carrying on all calculations to be equal on both sides of the div. So now let's apply styling to those 3 divs inside, not just basic stylings. And to do this, we need to specify a path like we've done already with the icon element. So let's type again div hash info boxes creator and div. That means go to the element with ID info boxes, go to the div element with ID div info boxes, and apply those styles to all divs inside. Okay, let's set the border of this to be 1 pixel thick, solid, and let's use RGB. Set it like, for example, 125, 125, 0. Actually, to prove that that we will change only the 3 divs, let's delete that for a second, save it, go to HTML and run. Maybe if we add some padding, it will be that more clear. Save. Oh, here it is. As you can see, we applied the border to our info boxes div and to our divs inside, but we want to have it only on the inside boxes. So let's copy this, paste here, and don't forget about the greater than sign. Save it, and run it again. And here it is. Just we have the body, margin just around the divs inside. Okay. Now quickly let's apply some background color to those divs. And some other values. So let's say background color, let's be white. We can set minimum height of the div, which will, like the words say, won't allow to be div smaller than, for example, 200 pixels. So even though the browser height will change, we always get, or the content of the div will change, we always get 200 pixels for that div, for the height of that div. Okay, using border radius like we used before for icon, we can also make just the corners of the div round to look nicer. Let's say 10 pixels should be enough. And let's apply some shadow, box shadow. But this time let's set the offset to be to 2 pixels on X, 2 pixels on Y, 10 pixels blurry radius, and RGBA. Let's be on black, 0, 0, 0, and for example the alpha value, yeah, 0.5. Okay. As you saw, the divs are kind of like a stack one on top of another, so let's make some small space between them. We can do this by adding margin on the bottom of divs, and let's set it to 10 pixels. And a few more things. This time we want to use font family. Font family to be a sans serif, and font size to be a little bit bigger than usual, so 1.2 EM should be fine. If you want to find out more about font families, you can check the link I put in the description below that video. So lastly, let's set opacity and scale for transform, but we actually will use that in the next part of the tutorial. So opacity, which the opacity specifies the transparency of an element, that is the degree to which the background behind that element is overlaid. 1 is fully opaque, 0 fully transparent, so we will set to fully opaque, and transform and we will use scale to be 1, so no scale. If we don't hover, if we don't change any other element, we want to that diffs to be always the same. We'll manipulate this later in next video when we will specify diffs behavior when we hover it. So maybe let's stop at this point. Just let's check how our web page should look like now. Here we have the background color. Oh, actually, as you can see, we have small issue with the header. We can simply solve this by adding to our header is command Z index. However, we work on in the 2D environment, but we can kind of manipulate the third value, the depth value, by adding Z index, which means okay, I will fix this later. Okay, I find the mistake I've made. It should be 10 just, not 10 pixels. By this we say the biggest number is closer to the user, to the screen. So we say use 10, and this element, the header element, have to be on top of everything. So if we run it now, see the diffs goes under the header. Okay. Thank you for watching, and please check the last part of the CSS tutorial in which we will modify our diffs to look nicer.